All right. Welcome back to the Dent Ment Podcast, where we dive into innovation, leadership, and transformation in the dental industry, not just maybe in the dental industry, but let's talk about dental. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Jim Arnold with us, a visionary leader, of course, with over 22 decades, 20 years of experience as a clinician, multi-practice owner, and industry educator. Dr. Arnold, you're a driving force behind two groundbreaking ventures. I know the luxury dental retreats, where there's a lot of advanced dental education that meets luxury experience. And I read this Jet Set Implants. It's a dentist-owned practice, transitioning models that empowers dentists to achieve financial independence without compromising patient care. So without me jumping in, let's welcome Dr. Jim Arnold to the show. That's one. And Dr. Arnold, if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself, and then we can dive in.
Yeah, sure
So,
thing. I'm just a simple kid from Indiana. I grew up about an hour outside of Chicago and came back here, met my wife here in Valparaiso, Indiana. She went to law school. I went to dental school. Neither of us ever anticipated coming back to our hometown, but we met each other in a bar, believe it or not. And here we are 26 years later, happily married with 4 amazing kids. But in terms of my dental journey, after graduation, I spent 3 years as an associate dentist, bought that practice, and went through a period of real overwhelm because I didn't learn a lot about communication and leadership and running a business in dental school. So I spent countless hours learning everything I possibly could. And you know what? It worked. I made more money that first year as an owner than I ever thought possible. And I did that while making every mistake I could have possibly made. But that heavy activity, feeling like I'm on roller skates because everybody's saying yes to treatment. I really, within 2 years, I was facing burnout. I was so overwhelmed with learning everything because, dentists have to have so many complex skills to run a successful business. I decided within 3 years of buying the practice, it was time to change our model, or I wasn't going to make it another 5 years, let alone 20 years. So that's when I started getting myself educated. For several years, my team and I did 300 hours of CE every year. And I don't actually advocate doing that much, but we spent $100,000, $200,000 a year, like really trying to get to a very high level in terms of clinical abilities, in terms of communication skills, in terms of team building, and my team went along for the ride with me. So coming out of that, I was able to actually do some teaching. I was a mentor with a David Hornbrook group back in the day. I was on a bunch of advisory boards with a large group that did transformative large conferences for dentists in fun cities around the country. But through all of that process, I didn't see it happening, but I went from being an engineer, just doing the dentistry, to then being a manager, managing a practice, to then after I built an amazing team that managed themselves, I got to become more of a leader. And that's where I really, really love being.
So I got a question, which is kind of a slightly bit of a pivot. Luxury dental retreats, they uniquely combine the high level dental education with essentially luxury experiences.
Yeah.
How did you identify that need for the model? How do these retreats go beyond the traditional continuing education to build both professional growth and personal growth for the dentist, for people that are interested, for your audience?
Yeah. Well, it's a lot. I conceived this last summer, actually. I looked back on my dental career and at the great transformative educational experiences I had, and after thousands of hours of CE over the years, I looked back and realized the best CE I ever had that really caused transformation was small group CE. It wasn't 100 people in the room or 1,000 people in the room. It was 8 to 15 people. Because when you have a small group, you get access to the leaders, you get access to the speakers and educators where you can have real conversations, where it's not just somebody lecturing to you, but conversational education that addresses each individual is hard to do in a big group. So I combined those with a luxury travel because I've been doing that with my family for 25 years. And I think that when you can get out of your home, get out of your city, even maybe get out of the country and go to a luxury venue, you're not just in an atmosphere with a small group that's very intimate. You're in a setting where you can really get recharged and rejuvenated, enjoying being catered to, with a chef who prepares the meals in our villa that we're all staying in, massage therapists and just great food, great experiences, and just, again, that access. So I combine those, my passions, and, it's a passion project, and I'm loving it.
Dr. Arnold, how did you come to dentistry?
I'm sorry?
How did you get to dentistry?
Boy,
what made you go to dentistry?
that's a great question. I really liked my dentist when I went through high school. He was just a really dynamic guy, really fun, and he was doing really well. I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm like, wow, he's got a really nice house. Wow, he's got a great lifestyle. And, honestly, at 17, that was probably about as much as that went into it. But as I got a little bit older and learned a little bit more, I realized how he can change lives, how he was changing lives. Now, I have never had a cavity as a kid. And so I thought, my gosh, he's got this easy life. He's probably get propped up on his feet, propped up on his desk all day. And he comes in and spends 3 minutes with me. And boy, that's it. That seems really easy. But when I really rolled up my sleeves and learned more about it, I realized, you can really transform lives through that. Whether you're helping somebody with sleep apnea, you may be saving a life. Whether you're helping someone transform their smile, where you're making them a more confident person, who's going to be, better equipped to be social and comfortable and happy in their own skin. There's just so many things that you can do. And when I looked at that versus medicine, I realized, well, as a dentist, you can kind of do it the way you want to do it. You guys know there are 50 different ways to run a practice. And I was excited about being able to run it the way that I really wanted to do it and would resonate with my patients too.
That's really great that you found that passion and early on you just followed that.
Thanks.
Now, fast forward 20-something years later, do you see yourself more as a businessman or a dentist? Do you want people to identify you as a very good dentist or someone who's had several businesses and is very successful?
I think everything to some degree. I didn't go further in my story, but 10 years ago, I sold my practices and, worked as an employee for 5 years. And I retired from clinical dentistry about 5 years ago. And that was always my intention at 50 to kind of parlay all of my experience, all of my relationships, and all of the things that I learned over the years into something where I could use that to really empower dentists. So that's really the direction I've been going in over the past year or so. Now, in between there, I did spend a year as a corporate executive with a DSO, and that was a tough life, man. I was on the road 4 nights a week, working 12, 14-hour days, and man, I tell you, I got into some really bad sort of my health really declined because you're on the road. You're eating crummy food. You're not really exercising because you're go, go, go. And so I had to make a change. And this change is something I'm really excited about.
And about your businesses, so there are 2 that you are running right now, Luxury Dental Retreat.
And Foundation Dental Services.
Foundation Dental Services, which you said you don't want to be called Jet Set, basically, anymore.
Well, we rebranded from that to this. It's just we're an alliance of dentist-owned dental groups. And what's cool about that is we have an ecosystem that provides all of the operational support. We've got an executive team that provides that leadership. We've got a legal team, acquisitions team, marketing team. It's kind of all of the things that are difficult when it comes to scaling a dental group. We're kind of taking a lot of that burden on so that the dentists themselves can really focus on doing the dentistry or making connections and bringing more into our ecosystem. And it's really a cool scenario because, again, there's no private equity involved. It's all dentist owned and operated, which means that at the end of the day, we know exactly how to make practices successful because that's what we work so hard to do our whole careers. And some of it through trial and error, some of it through mentorship. But when you have those kind of skills, it's nice when the dentists who built that are the ones that are going to be rewarded financially at the end of the rainbow. I think too often in private equity world, they're the ones making, 80% of the profit from the hard work of all the dentists and their great teams. And so through our model, dentists are the ones who are going to really profit more while we preserve their legacy, keep their team intact, continue to invest in the practice, make sure that the care is excellent. And so it's just a different model where I think everybody is rowing in the same direction. Everybody's on the same page with a shared vision. That means that we're not building for 3 to 5 years and then flipping it to somebody else. We're in it for the long haul. And that means we're investing in practices because we want to see those practices grow. We don't want to see them decline. We don't want to see lack of retention of team members. So the different model, I think, is something that's going to become more and more prevalent as time goes on.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, I think Milad himself here, he was pretty pissed at the business model that DSOs run. And when first he approached me, he was like, dude, I'm working for this practice and they're charging like 45% of the profit for providing literally nothing. Like they provide minimal support. So I think that's a very solid business that you're doing, and that you are basically you're not acquiring anything. It's still at the hands of the dentists. Like they are running it. You're just supporting them to do the scaling and running them through the challenges. But as I'm trying to understand this, everyone has a story when they start a company. Like Milad came out of dental school. He had deficiency in finding mentors and basically finding out people. So he started his own company, like Dent Ment. I had my own story when I started like my company, which is basically my friend got a toothache. I had to call up between 10 clinics and then none of them picked up. So I built a solution for that. What was your story?
Awesome. That is awesome. So you asked what my story is and why I'm going in this direction.
When did this part come in that I have to start something?
Honestly, it really happened this past summer for me. I had a very, I think, accomplished career. I did a lot of, I think, really good things for patients and for my teams. And I think for the industry as an educator, I really enjoyed all of that. And then we had a setback in 2020 with the pandemic. And, one of those private equity run DSOs, they got over leveraged and, took on too much debt and they mismanaged the company. And a lot of people lost a lot of money. Tell you, I went through a really hard time just emotionally and, from a psychological standpoint, it was really hard. I felt like my 24-year career had been somewhat kind of evaporated to some degree, so much that I worked so hard for. And last summer, I met Dr. Jeff Buski, who is a phenomenal kind of coach for male dentists. And, through our interactions, I got some clarity on what I really wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was educate in a small group environment. And I wanted to, partner with dentists to form a dental group. And so, that's what I've been working on for the last 6 or 7 months. And that was kind of the impetus for it. I want dentists to avoid some of the mistakes that I made and avoid getting into situations where they could lose, the majority of their net worth overnight. So, when we're dentist owned and operated, and we understand what dentists are going through and what they want and what they need, what their fears are, we can address each of those problems effectively. So, it's really my mission, empower dentists, create value for them in any way that I can. So that's my why, I guess.
Yeah, that's super great. Basically, a journey that I went on was that at first I fell in love with the problem that I was solving and with the solution that I had built and that it was helping people. Yeah. But at a later point, I fell in love with the industry, like with the whole industry of dentistry, because I just kept meeting amazing people one after another. I was like, wow, man, I just want to spend my whole time in this industry for the rest of my life.
It's funny. A lot of people, they dip their toe in the dental industry pool and they never leave. And because it is all about the relationships and the cool people that you meet through that process. If you're really intentional about getting out there and networking, the sky's the limit. And good for you for getting into it and staying in it.
Yeah, man. Like I was in the tech world and I had no idea that I was going to step into this industry in a second. When I did, I was like, wow, I found my next 20, 30 years career.
I concur. Yeah. I agree. I had no idea this was the next chapter as well. Like dentistry was not. It's like I knew of it, just wasn't that much into it.
Well, it's such a great industry where you can grow technology in a lot of different directions too. Because I think as a general rule, dentists want to be innovative to the extent that that's possible. And when you offer solutions to problems, well, guess what? Good dentists, smart dentists, entrepreneurial dentists are going to want your services. And so, yes, it's all about solving problems. And if you can figure out where those pain points are, what those problems are, and develop a solution, you're going to do really, really well. So congratulations to you guys. I'm really happy that you got into it. And doing that for us.
Thank you. It's great for us to have mentors like yourself and
Absolutely.
recognition. It's amazing.
Well, thank
So,
you.
Dr. Arnold, another thing, luxury dental retreats, you didn't tell us the spark about that one.
Yeah, it kind of came at that same time, and just getting clarity about where I could add value, and loving the continuing education world as both a student and as a mentor. I knew that I wanted to continue on that path and continue doing something, but I didn't want to do it in a sterile environment. Most dental education, let's be honest, it's in a conference center or in a ballroom of a hotel, and that's fine. There's a time and a place for that. But again, for me, transformation happens in small groups where you can go deep with people. And so when you talk about professional growth, that's one thing. It may be clinical, it may be leadership, it may be communication. All of those components are really important. But guess what? The human element is really important too. And if you don't incorporate some personal growth into that, you got a lot of dentists out there with exquisite clinical skills, but they don't do very much dentistry because they're lacking those communication skills or great team building skills, or, maybe the self-awareness that comes through, these intimate environments and really talking things out. And so I want every doc who comes through our programs to leave better in body, mind, and spirit, better equipped to take care of themselves first. Because it's just like they say on the planes, put on your own oxygen mask before you start helping other people. And that's exactly the same, I think, for dentists, because we go through school and learn very little about communication, very little about leadership, very little about running a business. And so we come out and we're overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed. I was super successful, was so overwhelmed. Like it didn't matter how much money I could make. I wasn't going to stay with it until I found those mentors, until I got those skills. And you know what? When you're healthy in body, mind, and spirit, it impacts your relationships in a positive way, and it impacts your business in a positive way. Because if you're not a good leader, you're probably not going to build a team that respects you and is going to share your vision for the future. And so if we can empower dentists to become better leaders and get healthy in body, mind, and spirit, then sky's the limit for what they can do.
Yeah.
So Arnold, it's so amazing that you mentioned that. I was just having a conversation. The reason the whole idea of Dent Ment sparked in my mind was when I left dental school, 2 years back, I was just telling, I probably mentioned this in every podcast, is like I felt so isolated because you leave the comfort of dental school with the staff, with 100 other classmates, and suddenly luckily, I prior to going to dental school, I in business with my brother. Like I was in sales, so I had some strange transition, but
Good.
man, it was like the first 6 to 8 months out of dental school. I think it was the toughest time because I just felt like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing, because I got to deal with the staff, deal with the management, I got to deal with the patients, got to deal with all of these things. And I felt so cornered, isolated. And I was talking to my classmates, and they're like, yeah, man, I felt the same way. Like 3-4 months out, we were like, man, we got to take vacations. What's going on?
Oh, heck yeah.
And that's why, like, the whole idea of, like, I was like, we got to do something. And that's what, like I said, the idea of Dent Ment came about, like, hey, how can we help you transition out of dental school? Be by your side, help you out. And just, like, don't feel that stress, because a lot of students that come out, like you mentioned, they just don't know what's going on the other side.
That's right.
And the dental school does zero. They don't tell you anything. Like, they don't tell you how to manage your stress. They don't tell you how to do leadership. And like you said, that's what sparked the idea of, like,
Good.
And then the fact that you're mentioning this, it's so, like, inspiring for me, that the idea, like, even you being out there this long and that virtue still exists.
Yeah.
It's so motivating to want to do this even more.
I think that a transformation in the industry is really necessary for a variety of reasons, because not only are dentists overwhelmed with the plethora of tasks that we need to perform every single day that we're ill-equipped to do. Not only that, but I think too many dentists feel like they're all alone. They're out on an island, and they think they're the only ones with these problems. And that's why part of both of my projects is developing community. When you spend 72 hours in a group of 8 to 10 dentists, again, you get to know each other, because you're going deep on your practice challenges, probably a little bit about your family. Maybe not everybody is going to share, but you're more likely to share what's going on in your life when you're in a small group than if you're with 100 people. And so that builds deep relationships too. it's not just deep relationships with me as the host or my rock star faculty members who are really providing awesome education within their particular niche and area of expertise, but they're building relationships with one another, and that's the kind of relationship that could last a lifetime, because you know that you're dealing with a lot of the same stressors, a lot of the same challenges, and then you're able to kind of not only help each other solve problems, but hold one another accountable too. It's like, hey, man, have you implemented the things that we learned? You remember that action plan you took home on Sunday? Where are you at with that? And so that's just another important component.
And Dr. Arnold, you mentioned a lot about leadership, and this is something that we've been discussing over and over on the podcasts. That's basically the biggest issue in the industry is staffing, but it's more of a leadership, because majority of the times the reason that the staff have issue is because they don't have a good leader.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think if a dentist, after they graduate, if they
froze
are
there.
good leaders, no matter what challenges they face.
Well, I think he was going to ask me about what does leadership look like for a dentist, especially a dentist who owns a practice.
Exactly.
I mean, every dentist needs to be a good leader, whether they're an employee dentist or an owner dentist. And here's why. Like, if you don't have a clear vision as to what you want to do kind of on a macro level, and then even a micro level, well, your team's not going to know what direction they should be going in. You got to have that clear vision. You got to have great communication skills. That means communicating with your team so that everybody's on the same page. But that's how you build that great team, through that communication. And then you've got to empower them. You've got to be able to delegate, and not only delegate, but delegate and trust. Because if you can delegate, but if you don't really trust who you're delegating to, well, they get that negative vibe. And, when you're able to truly delegate to people you trust, well, that's what frees you up and helps you get to more of a leadership position as opposed to a management position. And that frees you up to create balance in your life too. When you have that trust with your team, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. Go ahead, Lucy.
I have a specific question that's got to do with emerging technologies. I wanna get your perspective on emerging technologies, how they're shaping businesses, dental practices, dental offices, and how they're reshaping patient care.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts in the next, I'm not going to say decade, let's say in the next 5 years? What are your thoughts there?
It's so hard to predict out too far, because things, as you know, are just changing faster than they ever have. And it's really exciting. And it's exciting in our industry because, we've adopted so many great things that lend themselves to great digital workflows that not only increase efficiency, which, by the way, lowers overhead, but it means that patients are getting care that is more precise in a more timely manner, and with technology that wows them, which is really good for the practice and the practice's image. But it's so much more than image, and it's so much more than efficiency. I mean, some of these AI technologies obviously are used as diagnostic tools, where, the DSO I worked with rolled out one of those radiographic reading AI platforms. And I won't say it just because I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, I'm not talking about them. But I think they're all similar in terms of helping dentists be better diagnosticians. Because what studies have shown is we miss 10 to 15% of the dentistry that we should be diagnosing. And with that AI technology, now I didn't agree with it every time. You got to go through, and you can't just rely on what it says, because there's got to be a human element based on your experience and judgment. And you could have 3 different dentists interpret things the same differently. But with that AI technology, you're diagnosing more care that needs to be done. So that improves patient care, obviously. And when the patient can see that, picture's worth 1,000 words. When they can see that red thing, instead of pointing at a little x-ray, see that little gray area? I think it's through the enamel. No, they're seeing that in red, or they're seeing that in orange. And what a great communication tool. So that improves the patient experience, perception, and trust in you. It gives you, what you say, great credibility. So diagnose more, you get more case acceptance, so you're doing more there. And by the way, you're also getting more case acceptance on stuff that you had diagnosed previously, because now you've got this backup. It's like, look at this, artificial intelligence agrees with me. And then on the back end, you've got better communication with insurance companies. So a lot of insurance companies are really relying on those reports from AI. And those reports are helping patients get more of the dental care covered. And so that's huge. And then you look at just the efficiencies with regard to scheduling, efficiencies with regard to how you handle new patients, and the things that can be automated due to that technology. I mean, it's just, it goes on and on and on and on. And in terms of what we're looking at for the future, it's just going to be more and more and more of that. And that is super exciting. I think one thing though, I think as an industry, we have to be a little careful not to lose that human element also, be so dependent on those, that technology that we, kind of lose the relationships. And I don't think that's going to happen in most offices, at least the offices that are relationship based. So, but anyway, it's exciting.
And that's Arnold. Do you think that we're ever going to get a time where they use the AI to reduce the cost of dental school?
Wow. Now there's $1 million question, almost literally. Man, I don't know what your debt load was, but I know the average dentist coming out of dental school has got $500,000 to the debt. And that's before they've, like bought a home or bought a car or, started a practice or bought a practice. It's a tough gig. Now, it can be overcome for sure. There are ways and strategies where, you know that in this industry, you're going to pay that debt off, but it can be overwhelming for a lot of dentists coming out of school. And yeah, it's a problem. Maybe the efficiencies that are happening in dental offices will become efficiencies that are happening in dental schools, which make dental schools less expensive to run, which maybe lowers the cost for dentists. I mean, think about the all-on-X things that are going on right now. Things have gotten so much more efficient with regard to the communication with the lab and the actual lab work that the cost of actually doing that work is going down. And guess what? A lot of us are passing that savings along to our patients, because while the patient is maybe paying less than they were a couple of years ago, they're not only getting a better result, but your profitability has still gone up. So, technology that creates win-win scenarios is the best technology, and I think will be adopted and really grown the fastest.
Arnold, just to kind of pivot, just to kind of follow on that, I want to you talked about coming out of dental school and be feeling overwhelmed with that debt. I mean, I still feel the same way, but, like you mentioned, I just kind of want to ask you, like, what is your suggestion or recommendation for those young dentists that's coming out and they feel overwhelmed? What is your recommendation to lower that overwhelm? Just say, hey, it's okay. This was your path. Just kind of give them a little bit of advice on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you hit the nail on the head earlier, when you talked about mentorship. And, it was a real game changer for me when I kind of humbled out a little bit as a young dentist and realized, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed and I can't do this for another 5 years, let alone another 20 years. I found people who had been there and done that. I found people who had found solutions to that overwhelm. And I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I wanted to duplicate success stories. And the best mentors also share in their failures or mistakes or challenges that they didn't have to go through. And so I found some great people like that. And that definitely helped me fast track my growth. And that's going to fast track your growth for sure. I mean, you're clearly building relationships and interviewing a lot of people who have a lot of experience. And I'm sure that's already made a huge impact on you and your career, and it will continue to do so. And you setting up mentorship programs for young dentists, I mean, that's exactly what's needed. And that's something that we're trying to do through our retreats as well.
So, Dr. Arnold, going back to the question I was asking, sorry, I got cut off. I don't know why this usually happens.
Yeah, no
like,
problem.
I'm the tech guy. I think I got cut off again. I'm the tech guy, and it sucks when you're a tech guy and these things happen. It's just like when you're a dentist and you always have a toothache.
Right.
We were on the podcast last night with Mr. Steve Craig. I was telling Master the story. I said, when I was young, my dad, we always used to fix TVs. We had the TV shop. We would fix TVs. Every time we would have a guest that would come home, they're like, how come your dad is a TV repair guy? It's always the key or a button is missing on your TV. The back is open.
Yeah, right. It's like the shoemaker. The shoemaker's kid is the last one to get new shoes. I mean,
Yeah. Anyways, leadership. What does a leader dentist look like?
Yeah, I actually answered this while you were off the air because I saw where you're going, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version now. A great leader's got to have vision. A great leader's got to lead by example. A great leader's got to be a really good communicator, and a great leader has to build a team with the right people and then put the right people in positions to be successful, and then give them all the tools to be successful. Because when you build a great team, you're empowering your team to take some ownership in what they do. I mean, in my office, my team, once I got the right team in place, oh, and by the way, hire slow, fire fast. Take your time and find the right fit. Don't hire out of desperation. I did that so many times as a young dentist, and every time it was a disaster. Don't hire resumes, hire personalities, work ethics, and hearts for service. Hire people whose values synchronize with your value system and your vision. Because if the wrong person comes in, they're going to mess up your culture. And culture is more important now than it's ever been before. And culture is set at the top. Whoever the leader of that practice is setting the culture. And everybody's got to be on the same page. So in empowering your team, building a great team, empowering them to take some ownership. My team, again, any decision up to $1,000, they could make the decision on their own. And you know what? They made the right decision 95% of the time. And the times they didn't, well, it was a learning experience, and, it's okay. We move on from there. My team was able to, if they saw our patients out having dinner or having lunch in public, they could pay their bill if they wanted to. And just say, hey, wanted to take care of you today. Well, guess how many people patients tell that story to out in the community? And, the team member comes back, gives me the receipt, and I, reimburse them right away. So empowering your team is, I think, a mark of a really good leader for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's funny how the idea of being a leader, it's very important in every industry. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. And it has some core concepts, but some customizations that applies to different industries, different levels.
So in a dental office, I think that one of the common breakdowns is a lack of communication within the office. And every office I've gone to, hundreds of them, everybody says, oh yeah, we're great communicators. We don't even need a team meeting because we talk all the time. What it is you've got these isolated conversations between two people or three people. And oftentimes the front office is on a totally different page from the back office. And so establishing great systems is something that's critically important to any single practice, but it gets even more important as you try to scale. If you have systems that are repeatable and easy to train people on, then you're screwed. It's not going to work for 1 or 10 or 100 practices any better. Establishing that in an office, that front to back communication, and that comes through really effective patient transfers, which is something I preach daily in my offices. And then when they got it, I preached it weekly. And then we got to a point where we preached it monthly, but then we'd circle back if we had any issues, making sure patients were transferred with full communication and a full understanding for the next provider who's, taking that patient on. And the patient hears the same story 4 or 5 times in their visit. Well, guess what? There's very little room for confusion. There's really very little room for miscommunications. There are very few times where a patient comes in and says, what are we doing today? Or wait, I thought I was getting my teeth cleaned. Because everybody's on the same page. So those transfers, a weekly meeting where you dive in and make sure everybody's on the same page globally as a practice. But then just as importantly, every morning, you got to set 10 to 15 minutes aside for a team meeting going into the day where you review what happened yesterday, what went well, what didn't go well. What's going on today? Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the opportunities? Are we scheduled the goal? Where can we fit an emergency patient? All of those things make your systems run more smoothly and more predictably, which decreases stress for everybody, makes the patient experience a hell of a lot better. And by the way, it makes the practice a lot more profitable. And then you look at tomorrow and anticipate issues there. And so the communication element is really what leadership is all about. And establishing those systems of communication in addition to all the other systems that keep the trains running on time. If you don't do that, then, you're not going to do very well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially having that system is very fundamental for any company, any business, no matter if it's a dental clinic, if it's a startup, if it's a corporate. And I've experienced it personally that without that system, you're just going to waste months and months doing random things. Like even if you have a 10 or 20 people, you're just going to do random things. And then at the end, you're going to come back to the idea, oh shit, I needed to have this system in place for me to be able to grow. And I very much have experienced that myself. But the system doesn't just apply to the company, but to people within the company as well. They need to have a system for their lives, to have a balance. How do you keep that?
For sure. Yeah. Hey, great question. Our retreat, February 27th to March 2nd in Puerto Vallarta, Dr. Jeff Buski and I are doing exactly that with the dentists. We are helping them transform their lives in terms of their body, mind, and spirit, which then improves their relationships. It improves their business through being better leaders and everything else. So when you get into the core of what makes us tick, what makes us human, the more we can optimize our own lives, the more effective we're going to be when we're going back and not only being a leader, but like being an empathetic leader who knows that people have problems that, you don't want them to bring it to the office, but like our home life is really important. And when you have issues at home, like it does overflow sometimes, as long as it's not part of the patient purview and patients don't hear things, they don't sense the stress. I was a kind of leader who would sit down and talk with my team and try to help them solve problems in their personal life, and never crossing a line or, anything like inappropriate, but like, they felt comfortable coming to me with issues. And that, I think that is just because that was a culture that we cultivated as a team. And I'm not taking credit for all of that stuff. I mean, I got lucky with a couple of really good people early on, and they really helped me transform the practice into something that was a high performance team doing great dental care for our patients and always working together as a family.
So Arnold, before we move on, I wanted to, now that we're in the topic of leadership, and this question came about last night as well. One, I think I posted this morning as well. It's like, do you think that for a leader to be a good leader, to be an amazing leader, to have people kind of look at you as a good leader, sometimes, I just want to know what your take is. Do you think that it's okay for the leaders to be vulnerable all the time and just say, "Hey, I'm not okay today," or "I'm not"? So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think that that's a really important element for any leader or anybody who wants to help other people. That vulnerability, I think, makes you relatable as a human being, makes you relatable, and it gives you credibility. I sat through too many lectures over the years with guys or women who get up there and basically they've never had a problem. Their life is perfect and they never had a case fail and their team, all these kinds of things. And I always gave a lot more credence to the ones that were a little vulnerable and shared some of those things that didn't go so well. Because, if they got past that, well, then they can help me get through those similar things. And that's how I feel whenever I'm working with a dentist or a team member or a human being. It's like, if I've been there, if I've had a similar experience, well, I want to do what I can to help them. And that does come through vulnerability for sure. And authenticity, that authenticity piece is also, I think, sometimes sorely lacking. I think that it's something that I'm surrounding myself with authentic people. I mean, I can recognize pretty quickly. And if they aren't, then they're not going to be part of my tribe. And it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that I don't really like to interact in that way.
Yeah, tribe or not?
Hell yeah. You guys are great. I already knew you were great from watching a couple of episodes and then, our interaction online, of course. But what's really cool is meeting you, not in person, but at least face to face and having a conversation. Everything that I saw online is consistent with what I'm seeing here in conversation. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it as well.
Something I was going to say about that vulnerability piece that you mentioned. At first, I was pretty scared to share my vulnerable sides to other people, teammates, other mentors, like people that I was working with, colleagues. Partners. And at some point, I realized that when you share your vulnerability, it actually makes you look stronger. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely right. It does make sense. And, I think for men especially, and I'm not saying that in any kind of a sexist way, but I think that society we think for generations, if you're not strong and if you're not like on top of everything and if you have problems, well, then, maybe I think that men have been conditioned to feel like they won't be respected. But you're exactly right. That vulnerability means that, look, I'm confident enough and feel secure enough in my own skin that I can share pieces of myself that won't only help me heal or get better or solve problems, but it will help you through that same process, I think. I think that community and feeling like you're not alone, like you're not the only one, is something that's really important. And if you're not vulnerable, then you never find that kind of connection with
Yeah,
other
especially it
people.
gets very tricky when you have that vulnerability and at the same time you're scared to share it with anyone. And it's like it gets over your
Yeah,
head and it's very hard to work with it when you're not sharing it and you're not looking for any kind of solutions. Usually the way that people approach it
for sure.
is they're like, oh, once we get past it, we're going to talk about it, that we had this vulnerability and then we solved this, like we achieved the success. But I don't think that's really the right mindset.
Yeah.
You just have to share it while you have it, not after it's gone over.
Yeah. Well, in a small group setting, as I mentioned before, it's a lot easier to do that. And especially if the leaders of the retreat are doing that. I was actually at a men's retreat about a month ago, and there were just 4 of us. And I didn't know 2 of the guys very well, and they're younger than me. And I went in with a good attitude, but I also thought, how much are we really going to have in common? Well, when my buddy who was leading the retreat just like kind of dove right into it, everybody else was like, okay, yeah, you know what? If this is a safe space, we can talk about stuff. And the things that he shared are things that, we were struggling with too. And it's funny, it's not an age thing, and it's not even a profession thing. It's just like, as human beings, part of the human condition is, having challenges in relationships, having challenges in our careers, whatever they may be. And so it really brings people together. And if you show vulnerability, you'll be amazed by how people will tend to
Yeah,
reciprocate.
it's funny. As you were talking about that, I was just looking at my t-shirt, and a vulnerable thing that's been bothering me since the start of this podcast, I put on this t-shirt and then I realized that's like the here is a little bit untied. So I've been just working on this. So I'm
My
sharing.
vulnerable thing that is really bothering me, I'm having issues with my MacBook camera, and my picture is so bad. I keep moving my, like, is it better this way? No, it's not. I need to get on Apple support. So yeah, I'm very self-conscious about that. I like things to be just so.
No, it's we were talking about that. It just went back to, just going back to that conversation was like, for me, I hope whoever is listening, for anyone that's out of school practicing, for me, it's sometimes as somebody that, been practicing that for 2 years and kind of went through that transition, like you said, I was so afraid sometimes to show that vulnerability, but I came so quickly to realize that, I was always afraid of being judged in the practice as a leader. And I
Yeah.
I didn't allow myself to share those feelings. But as soon as I start accepting the fact that it's okay to share
Yeah.
those feelings and share what I feel, man, the whole atmosphere in the practice just shifted it
That's
by so much.
exactly.
So,
Exactly. They're much more likely to follow you and
yeah.
really care about you as a human being, because we keep our relationships professional, but as human beings, I mean, like I told you, my team, my core office, they were all with me for like from 16 to 21 years, before I walked away. And I mean, they always were and still are my second family. And that comes through, sharing some of those human elements.
Yeah, I
For
think
sure.
people should get comfortable with the idea that no one is perfect. Like there are always sides that we need to. If you have
Agree.
no vulnerabilities to work on, then what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, you're
If there's no room for growth, I mean, like you're not human. I mean, we all have areas where we can improve. And, it's one of the things that I think dentists in particular really struggle with, being the perfectionism, because we're dealing in tenths of millimeters, the tolerances are so tight and we're looking under like huge magnification, and like pursuing perfection. I mean, it's nice in theory, but it leads to severe mental health problems for a lot of dentists because nothing is ever perfect. And I don't know when it was, somewhere, I think I was about 10 years out of dental school before I had this epiphany. And somebody may have shared the concept because I'm not that smart. Probably somebody shared it with me, but at some point I had an epiphany related to pursue excellence. Excellence is attainable in all that we do. Perfection is not attainable. And so that was like a light switch went on, and all of a sudden it didn't give me like authority to not do a great job or not to be excellent, because that was always what we strive. That's what we all strive for. Perfectionism, it's a slippery slope, and it's one that leads to a lot of mental health problems for dentists.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree with that more.
Well, I mean, you guys have seen the statistics with regard to substance abuse, divorce, and suicide rates. When I started dental school 33 years ago, I mean, They told us that on the first day. I was stunned. Like, how? Why? Then I got out. It's like, wow, if you don't have like a good support system and really good coping mechanisms, you can see how things can really spiral out of control because, you're dealing with so many skills that you maybe just don't have. And then you have a lot of debt and you have family expectations, and it's a lot to balance for sure.
Dr. Arnold, with that being said, I think one of the things that I wanted to ask, so how do you go from being a dentist, you want to have multiple of locations, want to grow yourself, you want to be visionary, you want to do all these great things, but also still have that thing that we talk about in our industry, have that healthy life balance. Like, how do you do that? I mean, how did you do that in your time?
Yeah, good question. I mean, one thing is having your priorities straight. And I think sometimes we fall into the trap of, look, I'm going to work 12 hours a day because it's for my family. And, unfortunately, through that process, you could be really neglecting them and neglecting what is most important for you. And so I think sometimes we do miss that mark. I think that it's important as a business owner to have time blocked for our family, that business just doesn't intrude. You got to have some guardrails. You got to have a great team so that you have people to manage things as you scale up. You got to have a team full of leaders who can do training and can take on more responsibility. And you've got to feel that, again, the trust that allows you to delegate, which creates freedom in your life. But the clear vision is important. Having systems in place that are repeatable and teams that can help you manage that whole process. And that frees you up to create work-life balance. And if you don't have it, there are ways to get it. I mean, honestly, February 27th to March 2nd, that is the primary focus. Is so if you can optimize your life in those major categories, it's going to push you towards that work-life balance that is so sorely needed for so many of us.
That's just a question for myself. So, and I probably asked this question before, but I just want to see what your perspective on that is. So when you hire somebody, done the onboarding, you went through, you pretty much check all the boxes, but you kind of realize at a time is that how can you get your team at a time to see the vision that you have? Because sometimes you have this vision for your practice, for your life.
Yeah.
And the people that are around you may not share that similar vision sometimes along the way in your journey.
Yeah.
How do you correct that, or how do you communicate that over saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And at what point do you tell yourself, okay, maybe it's time for us to kind of, like you said, fire faster? So when do you get to that point?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, and it's kind of it depends on the vibe of your practice. But I think that the ideal scenario is where everybody shares the same vision and contributes to that culture of positivity. And as a leader, I think the only way you can do that is be very clear in all of your communication. Be very clear. I mean, if you're communicating with your team every single morning before you start, if you're communicating with them throughout the day, if you're setting an hour or two aside every week to communicate as a whole family, then it's hard for people to not follow along. But if they don't, it's going to create problems. And I guess, again, I think early in my career, I was very slow to fire because I was so worried about, oh my God, what am I going to do if she's not here? What am I going to do? How are we going to make it? And then hire somebody really fast because we got to have a person. Well, every single time that was a mistake. And you know what? A great team, even if they're a little shorthanded, will make it happen. And a great team and a great culture is going to attract other great people as well. And so if it's not a fit, you gotta cut the strings.
And Dr. Arnold, as you were talking about communication, I think another piece that's very important is that many companies and practices and corporates, they just keep the communications all work focused. They don't touch on their personnel and their employees and their colleagues on a personal level. And I think especially as a startup or as a practice that's just starting, it's very important for you to just besides making good colleagues, but also make good friends and teammates. Because other than that, people are not going to share the vision that you have. Because if you're the owner, people will know that you're the one that's, making majority of the profit, no matter how much work they do. But once you make it family and make them realize that, guys, we're all growing together. Like you just mentioned that you have a team of 16, 20 people that you've been carrying along as you went from having multiple practices to your ventures right now. I think that piece is very,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts? Some people say that you shouldn't be friends with your colleagues or teammates, but I think on the
yeah.
contrary, you should very much be friends with them. And, that's probably one of the major factors of having them share the vision with you.
Yeah, I think it is. And I mean, it was in my office. I mean, there are dentists who can kind of keep things a little more impersonal and be successful. It wouldn't work for me because it's just not where I am as a human being. I share and I care. And I think that one of the issues that a lot of offices have, and I think it comes into corporate even more than in private practice, is just devaluing relationship capital. Relationship capital is like the most valuable thing that I had in my offices. And that means that if you've got somebody who's been there for a long time, they've got relationships with the patients, they've got relationships with one another, they've got a relationship with me, they have a relationship with the office and where things are and how things work and all that sort of thing. And if I hear another corporate entity say, oh, we'll just backfill that position, talking about human beings as backfill is something that makes me want to scream. Because guess what? When you're just looking at a spreadsheet and saying, oh, this person costs too much, we'll do without her. It's an absurd thing to think that you're going to replace all of that relationship capital with somebody new who's going to plug in without any of that and is going to be starting over from scratch. It's a hell of a lot more expensive to lose a great team member than it is to, I mean, it's more expensive to replace them than it is to maybe pay them a little more, or show that appreciation. And I think sometimes as dentists, we're busy and we focus on the things that aren't going well. We focus on correcting. And oftentimes we don't focus enough on that affirmation. And if you can't focus on that, then you're not going to have a great rapport with your team. Whether you're best friends with them or not, you got to show the appreciation and affirmation of a job well done, because every study shows that obviously money is a big deal for team members. They got to have money to pay their expenses and have a nice lifestyle and have some freedom. That's super important. But just as important in almost every poll or study I've ever seen, that affirmation piece, that feeling appreciated, feeling empowered is every bit as important. And I think through the pandemic, as teams really struggled to retain those good people, I mean, I think that as they lost those people, cultures kind of declined, morale started to decline. And now it's harder than ever, I think, to recruit those really great people. And so what I tell people is, like, pay above market. If you've got a winner, pay above market, because they're worth a lot more than that. I can promise you right now. Take care of them. Take care of them in every way. Make sure that they feel appreciated. Make sure that they feel important and that they have some ownership in the practice.
Jose, before you go on, I just want to mention another quick. I
Go
think
for
as a leader, it's very important for people to really be psychologists, because they are working with human beings, like they're not working with robots. So many times we forget the fact that these are human beings, that they have values and they have a life for themselves. There are things, they have visions, they have passions that they are following. And if we can line up those passions with what we have, then no matter, even if you are giving them minimal payments, I've tested this, they're going to work way better than someone you would hire for 20x that salary. I have that kind of experience.
Yes. You know what? I think that, absolutely. I think that as a young dentist, I felt like I was in a state of panic half the time, and I was so overwhelmed and like had all this work that I took home with me and everything, that I don't think that I was as focused on the affirmation as a young dentist. I think I was focused on correcting, because I was panicked and I was coming from a place of scarcity, because I was just worried about, oh, am I going to pay my bills? When you get to a point where you change that mentality, even if you don't have it all, like if you come from a place of abundance, like people get it. And abundance means sharing with them. It means appreciating them. It means not just focusing on the negatives. And once I crossed that Rubicon, holy cow, like everything changed. And guess what? Patients started saying yes a hell of a lot more. When I basically, not that I didn't care, but it was like, look, man, this is what I would do for my own mouth or for a member of my family. But at the end of the day, it's your mouth. And it's your budget, and, I can't make the decision for you, and my feelings aren't going to be hurt. But until you get to that point, I think that it's difficult to get buy-in from your team. It's hard to get buy-in from patients.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for that.
Awesome. I have got a slightly bit parallel kind of question to ask you in that area of getting the right people, getting the right team members, hiring specifically. You must have some really nice, good questions that you ask people that are interviewing you. I always like to ask certain people, share some really good interview question that you get the most value, you get the most character out of that person. Do you have that one question that you always ask?
I don't. And I never followed any particular structure. I mean, I always had conversations. I had conversation. I certainly asked them something about their resume, about their experience, and
Right.
get a feel for how they deal with certain situations, certainly. But honestly, when I was interviewing people, it was more about getting to know them and to see if we had the right vibe, where I felt they'd fit in well with my team. But I'll be honest, the last 10 years of my career, the beautiful thing was I had a rock star team, and it wasn't about me. It was about them. They were the ones who decided who was the best fit.
Nice.
Like when we put out an ad and got like 100 responses and maybe only 8 of them were like worth following up with, no offense, but if you haven't been in the dental world, and anyway, you know how that is. So if we have 8 to follow up on, guess what? My office manager would be the one to follow up. She would do the initial interview with everybody. And if they were like, hey, like I really like this person, well, she'd take them around to meet the rest of the team. And when things were really aligned, we get down to 2 candidates and the team would take them out to lunch and they'd get a feel for the vibe. And it was always unanimous. Everybody would always agree on the same person. And then I would meet them and just make sure, get my seal of approval, which happened 100% of the time, because they know who they want to work with. They know who's going to contribute and who's going to be a prima donna. So no, I didn't have a very specific set of questions. It was more getting a feel for them. And I think when I was younger, I did. I'd go down that checklist and check this, and where do you see yourself in 5 years, and all these kinds of things. And I was hiring based on those check marks as opposed to how I felt when I was with that person.
That's a very good answer. I love that. That's absolutely spot on and season. So that's a great content to have for people that are watching and listening to this.
Good. I hope so.
Absolutely. All right. Dr. Mila, do you got any more questions? I've got one that I can ask, but any more questions that you've got, Dr. Mila?
Well, I have a lot of questions to ask Dr. Jim Arnold, but I'm sure that he's probably tired of all of us by now. He's like, how with you guys?
Hey, guys, I'm enjoying the conversation. I mean, we could be having the same conversation, sitting next to a bar that we're having right now. And no, I enjoy it. I'm really
the one thing for me, at least, what I really want to know, from in the past 10 years, that's just for me to know kind of like where do you see how the dentistry has changed in the past 10 years, and where do you see it going? Like what the future of it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think obviously technology is going to play a huge role in terms of streamlining systems and making everything a little bit more efficient. I think that the dental practice ownership model is going to change, as more of these DSOs that are PE backed kind of go belly up with everybody losing their equity. I think that more and more dentists are going to prefer dentist to dentist transactions. I think there's more comfort there because I've kind of been in their shoes and I can address all of the things that I know that they're thinking about or worrying about. I think, yeah, technology and that, and I think the need for mentorship is going to increase as well. Because as things progress at lightning speed, oh my God, like if you don't have somebody like kind of helping you see the way through all of that, I think you're going to be in trouble. And I'm going to reverse it too. I'm just going to say right now that I have mentors who are younger than me now, like who kind of get some of the stuff maybe better than I do because they grew up in the digital age, and they're more on top of things, whether it's, technology in the office or technology at home or social media or whatever. So I think that mentorship is going to be a two-way street, maybe more than ever before. And I think it's going to be more important than ever before, just to kind of try to stay on top of things.
Well, Dr. Arnold, I really, truly enjoyed this conversation.
You too.
It's so amazing to see you in person, and hopefully we'll get to meet live somewhere.
Hey, man, will you be at Dental Podfest next week?
Actually, I wanted to go to that one, but probably not. But I definitely want to get to go to one of these DSO events so I can meet everybody. I know everybody goes to those, and
for sure,
I definitely want to come to one of them so I can meet everyone that I bring on podcast. I want to do like a Dent Ment festival where I bring everyone.
Great idea. You know what?
It's a good idea. Hey, you never know.
Never know.
Well, Dr. Arnold,
Sky's the limit, man. If you can dream it, you can do
I
it.
was just going to
Yes.
say one thing real quick. Thank you so much for this conversation. Really, it's been very energizing for me. When I joined this podcast, as I know, I was a little
Really?
bit hooked up with work since morning, and it hasn't been very
Yeah.
pleasant, I would say, today. We had some
Yeah.
challenging conversations, so my energy level was probably 4 out of 10, and I don't think this
Yeah.
is going to be a
I
good podcast.
We're
I
all
was just, maybe I'm just going to be silent for the whole podcast, but seeing you and seeing your passion and energy, my energy level is actually at like probably 1 out of 2 right now.
yeah.
So
All right.
thank you so much.
You know what? We all vibrate at different frequencies at different times. And I'll be honest, like I've had times where I'm going through a rut. Like I'm just gonna say when I was a practicing dentist and owned practices and was doing a lot of stuff, I'd go through ruts. And when I got into a rut, I was very intentional about going out and spending time with people who were high energy, who were vibrating at my normal frequency, because it was always a shot in the arm. I always felt energized when I came back to the office. And that's what I'm providing for other docs now. Like if they come on a retreat and we've got 72 hours together, by God, they're not only going to come out with an action plan and knowledge, but they're going to feel energized and they're going to feel like, man, I also had a great vacation where like took care of me like a VIP. I mean, that's what I'm doing because that's what I appreciate. So I'm glad,
awesome.
I'm glad my energy kind of lifted you up a little bit. That's
Yeah.
my goal.
Dr. Arnold, he's using that as an excuse because of the shirt that he wanted to cover that shirt.
Let's get something out. Yes. Clearly.
No, that
Was a shirt the whole morning.
Well, I'm going to admit right now, I didn't notice it. So, unless without you drawing my attention to it, but since you drew my attention to it, man, it's all I can focus on.
So,
It's just like, kidding.
Hey, well,
No,
like that, I tell you one
appreciate
thing.
your
We are now me and Jose are massively right in. Unfortunately, our chest is very hairy. This is one place you do not want to focus on. So it's
That's
very
good.
pleasant.
That's funny.
kind of.
Yes. Well, Dr. Arnold, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
We
you.
really
Really
appreciate it.
Thank you guys. A lot of
appreciate it.
fun.
Absolutely
Keep doing
appreciate
what you're
your
doing.
incredible insight, your leadership, your innovation about future of dentistry, and it's been an amazing time. Thank you for your time. Very much
Oh, my
appreciate it.
pleasure. And thank you guys for all that you're doing for the industry too.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. We really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thank-
Bye.
Bye.